as part 2 neurotransmitters, if you didn't have as much of an abundance as you did when you first learned the stuff, it's likely that you need to get vasopressin and acetylcholine back into the system to get back to something that you were able to do. You understanding that? Yes?
So,
okay.
Also the motel state?
Yes. In other words, someone really was brought to the depth of themselves and with tears, when they heard this music, and it really was reminding them of something where they went through themselves. Now when they hear the music, it's possible that it reminds them of that emotional state, because the memory is state specific, the music to the music, as well as other things probably too. But so another example of state-dependent memory learning and behaviour. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is because for someone to go back to a memory, to access a memory of something, it's important that you elicit components of their experience that were happening then. The more that you can elicit, the more likely it is that you come back to a sense of remembering things that were occurring on that day.
So this is one of the techniques that Erickson used a lot.
Yeah, this is a major technique. This is a major technique in hypnosis and regression. Okay.
So in order to activate more acetylcholine, it's not necessarily a need to change the chemical makeup. You just put the idea in.
Let's just say someone's suffering with Parkinson's or something, and they're really possibly I might remind them of some moment, in fact, when things were functioning well. And the more they were remembering that, in fact, the more likely it is then that they're getting the stuff they need. So I would work with the person that way. Another example of this is you're really understanding this solidly.
Is that what you do with diabetes? If you work with someone with diabetes?
Yes, take the person back to the memory, in fact, of working well. That's very important. I do that always with everything. If somebody comes to me for smoking cessation or something like that, that's one thing that I do is the person goes back to the memory of remembering, being totally not smoking at all, but doing other things, totally not being aware of smoking or anything, it's not even in their experience. And remembering that actually, and remembering the sensation of how that felt. So another example of state-dependent memory learning and behaviour. I've given you this one before, but it'll really hit at home, so you'll understand. Remember the example I gave you of the person who left everything to the last moment to do at school, and then when there was enough anxiety there, they learned this stuff. Okay, so then anxiety became state specific to memory retrieval in the exam. In other words, the person went through this out of consciousness. They didn't plan to do it this way, right? It just occurred this way. But when the exam came along, they like this, and actually, so the memory retrieval became state specific to anxiety, and so that's quite a common thing that's happening out there, actually. That then memory retrieval becomes absolutely state specific to anxiety, and so what kinds of things does the person do then in their sorting style to get anxious a little, right? What kinds of things do they do?
Procrastinate.
They might procrastinate. They say no, right? You say something and then they say no, and then they say something else, even if they're adding things to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. They're sorting for, like you say something and then they're kind of looking for something that doesn't quite fit there. Or they're sorting for difference. That's quite a common thing where people sort for difference. And it's very interesting. Someone who polarizes, if you can hang on to that thought, someone who polarizes, sometimes it's even difficult for them to finish the conversation, to wrap things up, right? Because they've been polarizing, see? And the person's left feeling uncomfortable, not feeling like everything is complete at all. So that's another quite a common thing that's happening as a result of the person eliciting a state of anxiety, to get into that state of having the ability to retrieve from the memory. You notice many people like this. Many people, you immediately you'll realise somebody's sorting for difference. You'll notice that their breath is quickened just a little bit. You know, if you were the person, you would notice that the heart is starting to beat a little faster. You know, and actually then the person doesn't have access to everything. You know, like you do really when you're really quite relaxed. Okay. Is everybody absolutely familiar now with what state-dependent memory learning and behaviour is about? We're going to be going over that. We're going to be talking about dissociation and the use of dissociation as a technique. And then we're going to be doing a whole session again on hypnotic technique. And so all through this you're going to be doing various things to brush up on technique and that. In the past, Libby has always felt that she's not had quite the ability to put her words to and guide somebody through something. She's felt that she's coming into that, you know, but that she doesn't have that now, and I know that she does have this. To whatever degree she does have it. So during the components where we're going to be working in threes, it'll be a good idea to make sure that somehow or other we trick Libby a little into really going through the exercises, because that is the way that we learn. And it's a good idea to have a learning strategy where you really do put yourself into that spot to learn, rather than sometimes pride taking you somewhere else because you don't want to be in a spot where you mess up perhaps or something, right? So this is a limited strategy for learning. Okay.
If you I am a person that's motivated by anxiety, especially in college. I mean, it's like I wouldn't open a book till right before the exam. You know, what is this? You know, I couldn't believe it. And so how would I go about changing that? I notice I do that with everything.
Okay.
I've been tracking my strategy.
Yeah.
Everything?
Well, things that I don't really want to do.
Okay. The first thing is that the motivation to be this other way is that you have use of all of your faculties with this other method, whereas the anxious method, people just don't have access to everything. Mm-hmm. See, that will be the major motivation, to want to be more in that kind of a mode. So then you have access to everything.
So just being conscious then when I need to do something. So what I've tried to do is, if I know that I need to do something, I started focusing on how good it's going to feel when it's finished. And try to bring pleasure as my motivator instead of...
And also future pacing something to occur, Terry. So mostly people who are operating on this other program, it's kind of in the back of their mind and they're not getting around to doing it. And the person who is really using the front of the brain, right, to get things done, they're actually planning when they're going to do something. They've thought already, yes, tomorrow, that they're doing something actually and having it completed.
So
more likely when they arrive at that time, see, this is part of hypnosis, okay, that you set something up like post-hypnotic suggestion work, because you set something up so that when a person arrives there's some context that's happening that's reminding them of something in fact that transpired between myself and that person, so that when they arrive there, it's quite uncanny. Matter of fact, there's some things that the person's already been through in their mind that's triggering the memory of things to do. Okay. You had something there to do before, Richard. Did we? Okay. Did you have something else, Terry?
I was noticing in using your brain for a change, he seems, as far as I've gotten into it, which is about 3/4 of the way through, he seems to feel that if you know your strategy, like mine, I realize my strategy is pressure. I like to have that pressure. If you know that strategy, then to use that strategy.
Well,
But for me, it seems it would be more beneficial to develop a new strategy. So I was wondering.
Yes, I agree. I think that's true. However, when you that hurt, it would be like crazy to forget, that experience, So, that motivates us as well, and we learn this way too. So, everything is possible for it to have a use. And we're thinking, what is the most streamlined strategy? With the fewest steps that give you, the elegance, that you'd like. Okay.
David, do you think are there certain streamlined strategies that are universal, that are, you could kind of say that are like good for everybody? Or is it more to say for a person to streamline their strategy, or like
yes,
KAZ is a real streamlined strategy? Is that something we could almost on a universal say that if people can get behind this kind of strategy that there's a benefit?
Absolutely. In other words, in English, you'll definitely want to learn to visualize the word in your mind and spell from visually imprinting a word. That's absolutely going to work much better than a strategy that doesn't have that component.
You mean visualize the word dog, see D-O-G, or see a dog, or see both?
To see D-O-G, see the words, see the letters.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way, And then the other strategy you mentioned, was kinesthetic, auditory, visual. In neurolinguistic programming, mostly they're saying visual, auditory, kinesthetic, VAK, and then we're flipping that around and saying kinesthetic, auditory, visual. Because if you are having a preference for how you're feeling first, then you're hearing, and then you're seeing, this is a way to have access to the whole of the brain. So that's a more streamlined strategy. Mm-hmm. That would be to talk from seeing and then feeling like the latter. That might be a strategy that a lawyer might use. Might work okay in a legal context, but might not work at all in this person's ability to use feelings, in fact, or to tap into a person's feelings. The feeling component might be left out totally. Something could be very ruthless. Maybe they might not have access as much to their feelings, and certainly not have access to all of the brain.
When you say the feelings in this context, what is all that? What is all the feelings? When I think about what feelings mean to me, that's a big basket of stuff called feelings.
Yes, okay. So first of all, feelings might be body movements, sets of body movements through space, which is proprioception. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay, so it may be visceral, component of visceral and tactile. Okay, which is like the smooth muscle lining around the arteries and the vessels and things, and then also the Ruffini receptors, for a tactile sense. May also have a component which is to do with temperature.
Okay, so that aspect, all that.
Yeah.
What about gut feeling?
Yes, so in other words, when you have a gut feeling, sometimes in fact, the right hemisphere is wanting to share something with you about something like you say, well, I'm going to be able to jump across this, but then your gut feeling is saying, I don't think that, you're going to be able to jump all the way, actually, But the mind is realizing that I have to jump across there, right, or something. But the intuitive mind, through the gut feeling, actually is saying, I don't know. So actually this is majorly the way that this hemisphere speaks to this hemisphere. Through our feelings and through the inner insight. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
David, in this book that I've been reading, this is a little off the subject, but let's mention it, but she says that humans have thought that there's been a lot of information that we have to get out of our body. And actually what she's saying is that we've only maybe tapped into 10% of what's actually the awareness level of the body, like being able to feel the aura, being able to move energy, being able to, just that's one example, that actually the sensitivity that we can pick up through cellular information, that we've only tapped a small
Like,
part
for
of
instance,
it.
somebody who's blindfolded who can tell you the colour of something just
Right.
with their hand. Yes.
Right, and
She
she's,
drive a car blindfolded.
yeah, she's saying that the feeling first, this woman doesn't know about KD, I don't think, or anything like that, she doesn't know about NLP, but the theory that she's saying is that when the body is really totally awake, physical body's totally awake, that we've got so many more capacities than what we think, that it's the mind that has to wake up. She said actually it's the body that has to wake up.
Yes, mostly the body is the mind's experience of itself. Yeah, I would always relate the mind and body to be the same.
In Oriental medicine, when they talk about the organ and the meridian, there's no difference. When they talk about working with the liver meridian, they're actually talking about working with the liver.
With the liver, yes.
And it may not necessarily be that composite physical liver.
However, it is.
It is that,
Yes.
and it's the energetics that flows through the whole system.
Yes.
And that's why there's never an ability to separate one organ from another.
Excellent. In other words, somebody who has a problem, right, with bladder or something like that, okay, I certainly would be interested in sensing, what degree does the person have ability for passage through the colon, whereas other, allopathic approach, they're looking at the bladder and kind of maybe treating the bladder actually.
Right, maybe only one aspect of the bladder.
Yes, whereas I sense that absolutely the colon also is